Just have to vet it, but yeah.
If you know how they operate, you've got to keep them from doing the same thing to you in your county. Now, I know this split deal, the sad part is they are zoned. And they are zoned for sanitation. They can't just go do as they please. They're partially zoned in so many different aspects. But I think this is big enough and important enough and enough dollars needs to have a say in forcing them to put money away to clean it up, because they have avenues, they know them, and they will be used. Energy companies have used these same avenues for years. We have an opportunity, because the state's not going to do it, the feds aren't going to do it. We have an opportunity to protect parts of Reno County. We're not saying they can't have it. They just need to, it gives us a voice as a commission or a future commissions to make sure that funds are put aside for the cleanup.
Well, I'd like to speak to that real quick too. We don't have a voice. We have people that have a voice. That was the reason for the town halls. I don't disagree with some of the sentiment here. I really don't. But I disagree with disobeying people that voted us in, that asked us to do something, and the controlling interest of that to those people has been outside influence. That I disagree with.
Not necessarily.
Well, most of my emails were. But the overlying, no, just a minute, I'm talking. The overlying sentiment of those meetings was, we don't want zoned, we do not want to buy building permits. If you counted up the numbers, that's it. You had one or two at each meeting that spoke to solar, and that was it. Most of them didn't speak up to that. Some of them, if you'll recall, were for that. I get your regulation thing, but I would move to unregulate everything out there. Just purely because they don't want zoned, and they shouldn't have the afforded protection of anything. I don't want to harm the county either, but I think there's far too much misinformation on harming stuff over this. And again, it's, you made a decision when they come to your area not to have it put on your land. I can respect that. I can respect that from anybody that wants it. But I can't respect myself when I disobey the voters that the majority of them want this out there, but they don't want to be zoned.
The most outspoken person on not being zoned at all three meetings did make the comment, but I don't want solar. I would be happy with a similar deal to the wind, which would be an overlay with certain regulations. And I mean, I heard those comments from several people during those meetings, and just for the fact that we have our opportunity to make sure that the monies are there, if we extend those requirements, and right now, we can't do a thing. It came up in our Quad County meeting with, we've got a neighbor that's banned both solar and wind. And
Who was that? I couldn't make that meeting.
Harvey, I think.
Harvey County.
Harvey's zoned from one end to the other.
Yes.
We are not.
Yes, and by golly, the city of Halstead is allowing a battery storage facility right behind, button up to a housing development. Very poor planning. Those kind of facilities that are subject to fire and that kind of thing, in my opinion, that's the poorest place to put it, right beside a house. And that's what you got over there.
I'd like to talk a little bit about it, Don, if I
Yeah,
may.
go ahead.
While I live in outskirts of the city of South Hutchinson. I represent virtually all of the unzoned territory in Reno County. And I have paid attention to what people said, and Randy, I heard what they said out there at Arlington and Pretty Prairie and Nickerson. Nickerson was about 50-50, but they're in the zoned area. And I represent almost virtually, if not all, the unzoned territory in Reno County. And as a commissioner, we have to let some things bounce off of us and become pretty thick-skinned at times. One of the persons that spoke out at Arlington was dead set against zoning. I also heard from him that he wants zoning for solar. And one of the things that we have to consider is this is not just a can be a pretty large industrial project. Not like a 1 or 5 acre small business. We're not in the business of, they don't want zone for certain things, that's fine. Let's do that. But when they come to me and they say, we don't want zoning, but we want something just exactly like you put in for wind in our area. And to me, that says an awful lot. A person that's very anti-zoning as a whole, but still sees the usefulness of large-scale industrial type of solar zoning. You know, we're not telling people, before I say this, I want to say that I am really excited and positive about what the Planning and Zoning Commission did with regards to solar regulations. They took a lot of time, did research, really listened, and came up with a very practical type solution to solar zoning. And we're not telling people what they can do by having regulations as such. We're telling them what they can and can't do. We can tell them what they can do. They have to abide by these regulations. And that gives not only the people who are wanting to do solar, they still can, but it also protects at the same time those living within 1,000 feet of a project. And just like we held those meetings out in the county to let people let us know what they wanted, this also gives those people within 1,000 feet a chance to say. Now, they may not win because of the petition process. They may not. But at least they have a say. One thing that does concern me a little bit is right south of us, we're putting in this new, or plan to put in, the new gas plant for electric. I am concerned that the fact that that will go in could possibly turn into just exactly what's happening up around Lawrence, Kansas. Effigy's got a big plant up there, and they want to supplement that plant with 5,000, 4,000, whatever acres of solar in Lawrence, Kansas. Now, to me, from what I'm hearing, and not just from one special little interest group. But what I'm hearing from others out in my unzoned area, which is most of it Reno County, is they want to see solar regulations out there, so they will have a chance to have a say in future operations next to them. And I don't think that the state of Ohio actually gave some extra, in the state legislature, gave some extra say to those next to things, and they made it a requirement. And I think we have people here that, in the audience here, that live in the unzoned area. Not only that, but he served on the Planning and Zoning Commission as chairman and went through all the wind discussion, shall we say. And I think sometime we might want to just get a little input from a person who lives out in our unzoned area. Whoever. And I'm just, I see the advantages to having an overlay with a large industrial, potential large industrial project that doesn't hinder it from happening, but can let it happen with proper procedures. I think having the ability to go before the Planning and Zoning Commission to ask for a CUP, granted or not granted, but at least if they're granted that, then there's some overseeing rules and regulations and making sure that we protect our bridges, our roads, our ability to.
Those would be protected anyway, even if they didn't have a zoning out there. County has jurisdiction over that, if I'm not mistaken. The townships, they have jurisdiction over that. They'd make sure that happened regardless of zoning.
But who pays for it?
Whoever tears it up. They
If
could still actually require the roads to be taken care of.
If
That
you
might-
can,
am I
if you
incorrect in
can
saying that?
pinpoint it, if you can pinpoint it and catch them in the act.
Well,
Now, we, in Kingman County, where the wind has been left to go, I had a commissioner tell me we've got a big rash of broken down bridges that we can't hardly afford to pay for. So if that's the case, if there is damage and you can't pinpoint it, our citizens will pay for it. And that's liable to happen right now anyway.
that happens with farm trucks every year.
Yes.
It happens with everybody that doesn't pay attention to load limits.
Here's
I
one
mean,
difference.
I'm just saying.
Here's one difference, Randy, is that.
Well, I'm not disagreeing
I know,
with you guys, but
I'm just talking dollars here,
I know.
okay? If like that happened up here with the big tractor and grain cart,
Mhm.
if we have specific roads that people could, that the company could go on, okay? Then, with that case, you know how that's paid? It's paid based on depreciation basis. If it's a 50-year-old bridge, you're not gonna get any money to do that. We had to close the bridge just because of that. So, this can stay in there. Yes, they are gonna be protected anyway, but it's a matter of designating the roadway that they go on, so that if a damage does occur, they pay for that damage regardless of depreciation, I would say. I would put it in, make sure that that's in the country.
Well, you
But
know,
if the people out there that don't want zoning but still want solar, maybe we could hear from somebody out here.
But the bottom line is, we have enough scenarios where we can protect ourselves if we do this overlay. If not, we've turned it loose to where we have no control, we have no way of collecting from them when things go awry. And why not just put sensible regulations in place? You're not saying they can't do it, and putting ourselves and this county and its taxpayers in a position that they don't get caught. You can, it's just happened so often, so many places. It's just a matter of protecting us. And you say,
I'm gonna
we
talk
sh-
here in a
we
minute,
sh-
quit talking over me.
we shouldn't have the taxpayers of Reno County are all gonna pay for these things when it happens, and not just one portion or the other portion. It comes out of the
I mean,
county budget.
You really don't have to talk to me like I don't understand these things, because I do. I understand everything in the whole gamut of it. I've done my individual research, my studies of it over the years. I understand these things. I'm not for not protecting the county. What I'm for is we continue to shrink and shrink and shrink rights. We continue to regulate. I'm working on something I want to deregulate that we don't have out yet. And the more we can get the hell out of the way and let the people do what they want, the better they thrive. And that's just a fact of life. That's not what government's here to do. I understand the protections. I totally get that. But I also know in your district, you can speak to it as your district, I understand that, is my district, his district, his district, his district. We all work for the county. I never work for I-ish. I work for people. But I've heard a lot of conversations around this table already. I. I'm not gonna use the I because I don't work for Randy. I work for the people. And I also went out into parts that I have a little bit unzoned, but a lot of yours, because you're right, you have the biggest portion of it, and spoke to people. There are a lot of people that want it, and they don't want us messing with their business. If they want protections, then they need full zoning. Because they're gonna turn around here in a few years and they're gonna wanna protect something else, and we can't keep cherry picking. Had I been in office, I would have had this same conversation over wind. And so it's not that I don't want to protect people, it's that I don't want to take their rights. And you're alienating some rights of people that don't want you in their business if you zone something. I get the protections, but you can't have it both ways. How many times did our public works director speak up in the meetings and explain to the people, you're unzoned, so you really shouldn't be afforded protections. Look at all the other protections they'd have had we could make the decision to zone it. It doesn't take people's input. I want to respect their voice. But if we did that, they'd have far more protections than worrying about this. It'd all apply. And it comes down to building permits. In fact, I had a conversation with Mr. Partington in the budget. What would happen if we just paid for building permits? About $12,000 a year. Ain't gonna make a big difference, but that would be one of the rubs that would be gone. And then we would only have, if we stayed out of their way, there's no reason then that they shouldn't be zoned. Because we're not infringing on their rights, and we got the rights to flood control and everything else from state, local. I mean, for me, where does it stop, And you guys make your decision. I've said enough today. I'm not gonna say anymore. Richard really needs to speak. I think personally, we've cut him out enough, and I'll shut up.
No, Richard.
Well, I mean, I live in the city, and my district is in the city, which is heavily regulated. That being said, though, there used to be a business called Consolidated Manufacturing. And when they went out of business, then the city found out that their water table underneath that building was polluted. And the EPA and other organizations came in, and I have never really read what the conclusion was, but that water wasn't drinkable, or even, you couldn't even use it on livestock or vegetation. But they didn't know at the time it was seeping into the ground. That being said, I'm not giving them an out, but if you live in an unzoned area, you live there because you want no regulations. And you can't, it'd be fun for me to say, well, I don't want any rental houses in my neighborhood because they bring in riffraff. But I don't have the right to say, you can't sell your house to whoever you want because they're gonna make it into a rental. So that being said, I don't want anybody to pollute the environment. We just had, the report, on land conservation and this and that. And we don't want to shoot one foot because of the other foot saying it wants to do something else. And so I don't know what like I said, a smorgasbord or a cafeteria style, I want regulations on this, but I don't want regulations on that. If you live in an unzoned area, that could get kind of, I just don't think they're living there because they want that. They want to be free to do, and if we follow the EPA for guidelines for, you can't do it by Cabrera, you can't do it by, water sources and things like that. Those are built-in regulations, that we have to abide by.
People live in the country not necessarily because they don't want regulations, okay? There's lots of other reasons to say that they just don't want regulations because they want to live in the country is baloney.
Yeah.
There are other aesthetics for country. And it's not just because they don't want regulation.
Yeah,
And
I understand.
you understand that.
Yeah.
But some may not necessarily always understand they don't want regulations. And if we have regulations out there, then in addition to that CUP approval, there's also a thing called a development agreement. And out of that determines for sure, absolute sure, that the county will get some money. It's called, what is that called? PTL, PLT? Pilot agreement that says, right now, they don't have to give us a thing. They may, just out of their goodness of heart, they wouldn't have to give us $1 because they're 10-year exempt. And if we have a CUP out there, then we can determine what their pilot tax, payment in lieu of taxes would be for those 10 years. It's another safety factor involved in having a solar regulations, just like the wind regulations.
Richard's right. People build out there, but out there, they do what they do out there because that's what they want. I live out in the middle of the section. I didn't want neighbors. I had to build me a half-mile driveway, but I don't have a neighbor. It's what you want. And again, like I said, you guys do my campaign. I want less government, and I don't. What I really like is let the people vote on it. Let them decide, not me. But apparently that's not going to happen. So no, I just can't see. Regulate. There's not much out there. We're not having any big problems. There's more cows out there than there are people. I just want to. That's what they want. That's what they want.
You're in a zoned area,
Yeah.
or you at least, and you may own the land around you, I don't know. But if you didn't own the land around you, then if someone wanted to come in and put a development and houses right next to you, at least you'd have a say. And I think that's what these people want, is just to have the opportunity to have a say, whether they're for or against. That doesn't mean it won't happen, it's just because they're against it.
Yeah.
Well, I
just not
think Richard, in our last meeting, made a comment that is really true. You want to be careful what you wish for because you might get it. And that's no truer comment. Whatever happens out there, in my case, and when I was younger, I went against and talked against zoning. But our whole community changed. And suddenly from the majority went to the minority. And the minority became the majority and they asked to be zoned. Things happen, things change as time goes on. Minds get changed because of what's going on in the area and who's there but we've got to make a decision now.
Well,
One thing,
I mean, we can't do it today,
Right.
but.
I'll let you
if-
talk, Randy, but
No,
it's
you're
just
fine.
like, the Ramada Inn. You know, the city messed with that guy for years. And finally, we're tearing it down. The city is. And everything, because the guy basically gave us the middle finger and said, screw you. I don't want to, and again, if you want to build an electric, a solar plant, that's your business. But my wife, I can tell I'm getting older because we like to watch some of these information shows or, shows, and where they'll have like abandoned structures, and they're from all countries and stuff. And at one time they were just extravagant pieces of property, and now they're in decay. And it's like, who's paying to take care? Is somebody going to tear it down? No, we're just letting the ground reclaim it. Well, that's great if it's okay for the ground, but if it's hazardous material, and we get sued because it's in an unzoned area, and a judge says you guys are responsible for it because the landowner's not doing anything, then we're like the Ramada. We're paying for that cleanup.
Well, and I think somebody said something a minute ago, I thought it was an interesting comment. I just picked up one and I was thinking about it anyway, but it kind of brought it to mind. There's a third option. You can extend zoning to those that want to petition to become part of the zoned area. And they always have that right as a township to be part of the county. I mean, if they want them afforded protections. What if we got pockets out there that want protections and some that don't? Certainly, you guys increased your zoning areas down there because you wanted some certain rights. That is also the right of people to petition the county to become part of the county. And then they would have those rights instantaneously. And that would give the people a choice. I mean, I would be for staying out of it and letting them have that choice. If you want these rights, then you need a petition to become zoned. I mean, I think one of the rubs out there wasn't necessarily just the solar. You're right, there was people spoke to solar, but I reflect back to the fact that I think that the building permit issue was that, well, we're gonna build our little garage over here in the corner, nobody's gonna know it. It's gonna be found out in this day and age, and you're trying to evade taxes that just don't happen anymore. I mean, it's one of those things that you're gonna find by various sources that we subscribe to and the cities have too. They're gonna see that real time if they need to, and we're not looking for that, but it happens, and so that's really not a legitimate reason to not be zoned, I don't think, in my opinion. But then I respect them for not wanting to be, but that's a third option. They could become part of the county, and it wouldn't have to be all of it. I don't. That's probably driving you crazy, Patrick.
No, you know what? I wrote my pros cons list in case anyone, and you guys have covered exactly what the pros and cons of the situation are. Right? So I haven't had anything to add to this point. If you did decide next week, we have a moratorium in place now that ends at the end of this month. So just off your comment about a petition, if you decided to go some third way and get input from people, that would be my question is, do we just let the moratorium end and let that happen, or do we tell people they have a certain deadline to get a petition in, or that would be my question, because I think that would be something to consider. I wouldn't want to just say, take 3 years and see who gets petitions. I don't want the moratorium to last any longer than it needs to. So if you consider going down the road of trying to get some sort of neighborhood input, I'd rather just let, if you,
I appreciate the third.
Moratorium end and start over.
I appreciate the third choice, but I don't want to be like the state and the federals to just push everything on down. And I think if I don't know if Lisa has something to say and the commission wants to hear from someone outside that hasn't given us any information yet. I don't know whether they want to do that or not, whether she even wants to do that.
Legally, where are we at? This is a study session and not a,
well, it's a study session. I mean, you guys can solicit opinions from, the public can be here and you guys are allowed to get some
We've done it
input.
before.
And you live in the area, right?
I live in Center Township, just south of Partridge.
Yeah.
So I'm in an
So you
unzoned
so you
area.
know that
I went to that meeting in the public hearing in
yeah,
Arlington that
was a good
was
one.
pretty heated.
Yes.
That was probably, that and Pretty Prayer was probably the two most heated ones, that's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you'd like to visit
Sure.
with us and kind of give us your input, I'm game, because you live there.
Yeah. I kind of appreciate Commissioner Parks' contrarian position of they don't want to be zoned, so we're not going to give them any other protections. But, you know, I didn't hear anybody say, I really don't want you to regulate solar. They may have said I did, but there was no one who said regulate solar. I think mostly what they're concerned about was I want to be able to put a shed where I want to put a shed, and I want to be able to start a business where I want to start a business without anybody telling me I'm going to do that. So and I don't like the idea of piecemeal zoning. I don't think that's really effective because you just got to keep addressing issues as they come up. But in this case, I think if you've got good regulations, it makes sense to do it across the whole county. And I don't like that third option of, because people will not ask to be zoned until they've got an issue. And so you're going to constantly deal with another township saying, we've got an issue. And so you're going to constantly. So I think you either decide you're going to do the whole thing or you don't do it. But I would recommend just you put it across the county.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would it be appropriate to get some thoughts over here? They're the planning and zoning people, and
I think we want to give you guys whatever information you need.
Dare you do that?
Yeah.
well, I think from past experience, I probably know how Don feels. He said it publicly, but we're in the middle of this, and he and Mark had taken time to be here, and I think
I think we ought to hear from them.
that's my thought.
Well, I figured I'd be speaking. There is no right or wrong to this, and it's a deal. And I don't have a side on either side, so I can come at you from both sides and have your heads blow up. I could, on why we should or why we shouldn't do anything. The thing with it is, the piecemealing in, I never agreed, because I think, like right now, when you choose that there's issues coming on and you want to have a say, then be zoned. And when the people say, I don't want to be zoned and leave me alone and stay out of my business, then that's one thing. When somebody says, I don't want to be zoned, I don't want anybody telling me what to do, but I want to be zoned for solar and wind. This is what bothers me about that. It appears to me that the people that say that do not want solar or wind. And they're not going to have solar or wind because they're not going to lease their property. So the only reason they want zoned is to have a say in what their neighbors can have or can't have, or where it can be if they can have it. If somebody would come and say, you know what, I think there's wind coming in, maybe solar coming in, and that's bigger than us, and we need planning and zoning, we need the county to have regulations and to help us in case things go bad, then that's an excellent reason to be zoned. And that's with everything besides wind and solar, that's everything. I think that's excellent. I think if you want to be zoned for the sole purpose of controlling your neighbor, I think it's wrong. Now, for those big companies or you know, like solar or wind going in there without regulations, that's scary. But also, that's when the people need to make a choice. Do you want to be zoned and suffer that edge of the sword of whatever that means, and in agriculture it means very little? Or do you not want to be zoned and suffer the consequences that whatever happens on your land, whether it doesn't get cleaned up or not, is on you? It's not on the county. The county's not there to protect you. It's your private property. It's on you. So whenever they lease their land, you would hope that they'd have some kind of negotiation with the company to cover all that stuff. Do you expect the private citizen to probably do that? Probably not. When do we decide that you're not smart enough to do that, so we're gonna make sure that we do it for you? That's the big deal. I think they need to make a choice. Be zoned or unzoned. like I say, it's scary for anything to go out there with no regulations, but that's their choice, and they need to make it. Because regulations, I understand totally, regulations is fine. But whenever you have regulations, you are infringing on somebody's property rights. You're telling them where they can have something or whether they can have it or not. And regulations are good, but don't say that regulations is more than just protecting somebody. It does infringe on property rights. Regulations all have boundaries. They have rules. That's not to say regulations aren't good and aren't needed. So see, it's a mess. It's a mess. It's a mess when people won't decide, I want to be regulated and suffer that edge of the sword, or I don't want to be regulated and suffer that edge of the sword instead of just piecemealing stuff in. It's never going to end. But these are two big subjects that it's easy to see why you piece it in. But when you only want that, I don't want to be regulated, but I want regulations for that. That's so I can tell my neighbor what they can do or not do. Maybe have a say in. So that's all I got to say. And see, I didn't fix nothing for you right here. I didn't fix nothing. And so, you know, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. It's just, I think you have to decide. They have to decide. And we opened that door to let not a clear decision be made. That's what we did, right or wrong. Because now there's not, yeah, I want to be zoned. No, I don't want to be zoned. Now it's like, no, I don't want to be zoned, but yeah, I want to be zoned for this. That's what we've created.
So we should take that option off the table.
Well, I'm not.
No, I know you haven't made that
I'm not
decision.
saying, and
but-
I want to repeat myself, that something like that going in with no regulations is scary, but it's left up to the landowner if it's not zoned, and they need to decide whether they want that risk. And I don't know how you get that out of them.
You know, we have one regulation right now that fits that description with regards to protecting a homeowner. And that's a state statute with regarding the CAFIDs. That's concentrated feeding operations. They set a regulation up right now to where if it's under so many thousand head, say 1,000 or 500, I don't remember the exact number, you can't put one in within so many feet, half a mile of an existing household. If it's over so many, you gotta be so many miles away. That's already there, so it's kind of come into that same thing of we're controlling what operation can go in next to me. I
That's
mean,
federal,
that's
right?
just an example.
That's federal, right?
It's-
That's federal.
No,
That's not us.
state. That's state.
That's not us, sir.
That's state.
I mean,
But the point is that
Yeah.
you've got partial zoning in matters like that, where the state laws come into effect. It's not like they're unzoned, totally
You have
unzoned.
water zoning from the state and stuff
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah, I mean,
imposed
yeah,
upon
yeah.
folks. And
So is it possible to
But
have?
we don't have anything to do with the state, we're talking county here
Yeah.
today, so I mean,
Policy.
that's a great example. It
Business like.
doesn't clear our problem up.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
we got enough.
Like we have it for our insurance, we have house insurance.
They put the regulations on these feed laws tight enough
Mark,
that there's not a need for clean.
you've been silent.
Mark wants to stay silent.
No, I'm here to answer
I
your
just
question.
know you get fired like those.
I would say that Don and I have talked a lot, and his analogies and stuff are spot on. It's tough. I would just remind, the commission that there are other regulations out there, as you have mentioned as well. Sanitation code is out there, floodplain regulations out there, entrance permits are out there through public works, so it's not like it's, a free-for-all. And I think the key to this and whether to decide is, you're allowed to zone what you want if you see a need for it, but you gotta decide why are we wanting to regulate that area. I would tell you that I'm not really a believer in just cherry picking from the cafeteria, as you guys have alluded to here. I think you have to be completely zoned or not zoned, because what is the difference between somebody that lives 20 miles east of Hutchinson being zoned and regulated and getting permits versus somebody that lives 20 miles west of Hutchinson and having to get permits? I think one of the keys is to have regulations that this board and its staff are comfortable with, and what we want to regulate and how we want to regulate it. We started out, when I got here many years ago, with essentially Hutchinson regulations. And I know Lisa was a part of that. And we spent many years trying to find a set of regulations that we thought would work for the county. And I think we did that. As the years go on, I think priorities change, and I think we have a lot of amendments that we want to do. Still regulating, some basic, principles we want, setbacks and operations of businesses in the county go through the conditional use permit process. And we would like to get on that to, I think, make these regulations maybe even better. Still not have them to where they're just, you can do about wherever you want, but yet providing an opportunity for surrounding property owners to have a notice in the paper to be able to comment to the planning commission when a person wants to change the use on their land, whether that be, run a small little business on their property, a landscaping business, or operate, and have a commercial solar or wind farm on their property. It's about trying to provide that citizen out there that opportunity to come to the planning commission, be heard, bring up concerns that they may have with the project. And when you're unzoned, you don't have that opportunity. Now, I think with a solar or a wind farm, I think there would still be an opportunity maybe for a reputable company to come in and do a developer's plan with the county so we can protect our roads, obtain a pilot maybe. But so, if you choose to go forward with maybe that public hearing process, it'd be a few amendments to our regulations. We did the commercial wind regulation district for the western part of the county, and we have to just amend that to add the solar regulations out there, change something in Article 13 for that zoning district potentially, and we would go through that public hearing process.
I guess one other thing I wanted to say, to me it'd be different if you guys had chosen to ban solar in the zone and we were talking about banning it countywide, it might look different to me. But I think that the commercial regs that you guys made are going to be workable for somebody, and I expect to get, or I'm a little surprised we haven't had a request yet, but I expect there to be some people that attempt to make a development in the zone. And I think that if you extended them countywide, I think a development company would be able to try and do something under these regs in the western side. It would look a little different to me, and I don't know, legally, but it would feel different if we were banning things completely in areas where nothing else was banned.
But we do know that there are leases out there already.
Sure.
So whatever happens in the next couple days, or essentially couple weeks, the wheels are in motion already. It's just until that the moratorium ends or we do something, we're gonna have this right back in our lap. Well, I guess we won't. We don't have it zoned unless we zone it.
If you leave it unzoned and someone does something, then they'll call us and we'll say, we don't know. It's not on us. That's what would happen if we were unzoned. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, to be honest. That's what that would look like.
I don't want to ban it, but I want regulations, and I think the people of my area and the majority want regulations. So it can still happen if they want it to happen.
And Randy, you're saying that people as a whole shouldn't have, if you're in the zone, but what if you're in the zone and within the 1,000 feet? you should be able to say what happens. It's just a matter of being across the road. So do, you know, every scenario you want to come up with, you can come up with.
It's a conundrum at best, and I mean,
Yeah,
I respect the folks that want it banned or want it zoned, regulated. I totally get that. I also respect the folks that want to be left alone. So my whole point with that for me is that you really shouldn't have one or the other. You ought to have it all. And we're not gonna force that issue on you, but it really does very little to anybody if they just do it. I mean, that's why I said the third option might be great, because then they could potentially be on board or not. And that would leave it up to them. We could move forward that way. Not a great option, I get it, but
But on the other hand, that's how it happened down there. Where in my district, is thought process changed and they asked for it. If I understood,
Well,
there was a gap up here between Hutch and Bueller, and at some point they asked for it. And so it never became zoned as we know it now, all in one package either, which alludes to what you're saying.
After the town hall meetings, I remember an email that I received that was tagged in by someone that lives down there that you know very well, that tagged one township and said, I would ask you guys to petition to be zoned so we could do something with this. And he was somebody that you was gonna nominate a while back. And he was all for that and sent that out to people. I mean, that's why I threw that option out. I think it is an option. It's probably not good. Maybe it'd be a good one. I don't know. But it would give the people a voice. But again, I know we don't want to keep extending the moratorium. I get that, Patrick, but
Well, you can, as long as you,
I like both people to have their way if they can, and have a voice.
So what
I want
happens-
the protections, but I don't want to force it.
They talked about a road, so I've gone all over the state, and you go from one county to the next, it's usually a road that divides the county. So what if I live on this section and I'm on the south side of the road, you're in an unzoned section on the north side of the road, I have regulations I have easements and back and everything else. They're in an unzoned area, so they can do whatever they want. What happens if they build it right on the edge of the road? I mean, if the wind's out of the north, that stuff blows right on me. Same thing though on mine, if I have cattle or pigs, the wind's blowing out of the south, they're getting my stuff, so.
Well, on the feedlot issue, that's why the state has like the state kind of did a standard zone, a standard process for everybody. And I know people who've talked about doing that for solar and wind, it probably won't ever get done. But I guess in terms of solar, if somebody wanted to try and if they were just across the zone line, they wouldn't.
Have any gallon limits.
Yeah, they really wouldn't, yeah.
So,
We wouldn't, or more effectively, we would not have any jurisdiction to tell them they did wrong, is how I would say it. Like, if someone was on the other side, we can't say that they're in violation of our zoning code because our zoning code doesn't exist on that
our section.
And I own property in Hutch, but I don't have a say over anything.
I own property in Haven. All I get to do is pay my taxes. I don't even get to vote on anybody or anything. I mean,
Thank you for doing that. I'm sorry.
I tell you what, we
That's
just
a hard
went
thing
around
to
with
say.
the tax people yesterday. And the preparers to try and keep us out of trouble. But, well, guys, I guess we've cussed and discussed. So I'm guessing if there isn't any more to say.
What are we doing?
Well,
What's the direction?
I don't think we make a decision here.
we can't make a decision here, so next meeting we'll have to do a
Put the same
vote.
item that's on here, put it on the 23rd?
Yep.